Every armor set in Elden Ring tells a story. Some whisper it through item descriptions nobody reads. Others scream it by literally changing the game's narrative when you pick them up. Today, I'm breaking down every iconic armor set in this game, what it means, and why it matters. Starting with one you can grab before most players even find their first boss. Twinned Set. Here's something most people don't realize. One of the most lore-heavy, story-altering armor sets in the entire game is available within the first 10 to 15 minutes of your playthrough. You just walk east of the Gatefront ruins, find D, Hunter of the Dead, standing near a cemetery, kill him, and it's yours. That's it. No dungeon, no boss gauntlet, no hidden questline to unlock, just a dead man and his armor. But this isn't just early game loot. Read the item description. Not once do they stand together. Not one word do they speak to one another. The Twinned Set depicts two bodies, gold and silver, intertwined. Two brothers sharing one soul who never once spoke to each other. That's not flavor text. That's a tragedy compressed into a single sentence, and it immediately tells you that gear in Elden Ring carries genuine emotional weight. Now here's where it gets interesting. You can alter the set through Bach the Seamster to remove the cape, giving it a cleaner silhouette with adjusted defensive values. Fine, standard stuff, but the real power of this armor has nothing to do with stats. If you take the Twinned Set to Dee's twin brother Devon in Nokron, Eternal City, and hand it to him, the entire FIA questline changes. He disappears from Nokron. He reappears at Fia's location in the Deeproot Depths, and the consequences of that meeting reshape the story in ways no other piece of equipment in the game can claim. Data-mined evidence suggests that after Devon avenges his brother, the sword and armor left behind indicate he dies too. Players still argue about whether giving him the set is the correct lore choice, or just a one-way ticket to a revenge death. There's no clean answer. Stat-wise, let's be honest. The Twinned Set weighs roughly 5 units more than the Knight Set, while offering 1 less poise. It sits below the critical 51 poise PvE breakpoint, so you're not wearing this for optimization. You're wearing it because it means something. And in a game with hundreds of armor sets, that matters more than most players think. But if the Twinned Set is a story told through tragedy, the next set is a story told through loyalty to a queen who lost everything. Carrion Knight Set. Most players sprint through the Academy of Raya Lucaria like it's a race. Get in, kill the boss, move on. But the ones who actually slow down and explore the graveyard area, they get rewarded with one of the cleanest armor sets in the entire game. The Carrion Knight Set is a static pickup found near a shrine in the Academy's graveyard section, guarded by glintstone zombie enemies, and here's the thing, you can grab it before you ever fight Renala. No boss kill required, just curiosity and a willingness to poke around corners most people ignore. But this isn't just nice armor you found in a magic school. The Carrion Knights were enchanted warriors sworn directly to the Carrion royal family. That's the same dynasty that produced Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, and her daughter Rani, who is arguably the most important figure in the game's entire sorcery lineage. Wearing this set means you're repping the same house that shaped the Lands Between's magical history. That's not nothing. Stat-wise, the full set grants 26 poise, well below the critical 51 poise breakpoint, which drives theory crafters absolutely insane. You're 25 points short of tanking through most standard weapon attacks, and that gap has fueled countless forum threads about whether it's worth mixing in significantly heavier pieces to bridge the difference. It also weighs identically to the base Knight set sold by the Twin Maiden Husks, which means you can swap pieces between sets without burning extra endurance levels. Fashion mixing without punishment. Now, the cape. We need to talk about the cape. It clips through the elbow guards in a way that is genuinely distracting once you notice it. You can take it to Bach the Seamster and have him alter it off, but some players refuse because the blue cloth catches light in a way that looks incredible during sorcery animations. It's a real trade-off between visual polish and pure aesthetic vibes. And speaking of vibes, the community has essentially canonized this set for battle mage builds. The silver sheen pairs naturally with Carrion sorcery effects, and combining the Carrion Knight chest with Bled's gauntlets and greaves has become one of the most endorsed fashion combinations in the entire game. It's not official, it's just correct. But if you think looking good is impressive, wait until you see an armor set that carries the weight of an entire war on its shoulders. Radahen's Set. Radahn is the most hyped demigod in the entire game. He held the stars in place through sheer gravity magic just to stop Ranni's plans. He fought Melania, the Scarlet Rot goddess herself, to a standstill during the shattering. Players organize an entire festival just to take him down. He rides a horse that's comically too small for him because he learned gravity magic specifically so he wouldn't crush it. The guy is a legend, so you'd expect his armor to match that energy, right? Here's the thing. The General Radahn set is statistically almost identical to the Banished Knight set. The chest piece edges out marginally better overall protection, but we're talking fractions of a percentage point. The Banished Knight set is farmable from random enemies in Stormvale Castle, a location most players clear before they even think about stepping foot in Caelid. So the mightiest living demigod's personal armor barely outperforms gear worn by nameless knights guarding a castle you cleared 30 hours ago. But before you write it off completely, there is one genuine mechanical redemption here. The full Radahn set grants 60 poise, which comfortably clears the critical PvE breakpoints that let you trade hits with most enemies without getting staggered out of your attacks. That's not nothing. Most story boss armor sets don't actually reach that level of poise stacking, so Radahn's gear at least earns its place in a practical loadout even if the raw defense numbers are underwhelming. Now, the community has floated claims that wearing the full set increases rune farming rewards. Nobody has ever mechanically confirmed this. No data miner has found a hidden modifier. No game file supports it. Consider that one firmly in the sounds cool but probably not real category. And then there's the debate that never dies. Did Radahn actually win against Malenia, or did he lose? The fight ended in a draw on the surface, but Malenia inflicted the Scarlet Rot on him, which slowly destroyed his mind and reduced him to a feral beast crawling through the desert eating corpses. Some players call that a loss, with extra steps. Others argue he held his ground and never fell in combat. The Rot just cheated. Years later, this argument still has no resolution, and honestly, it probably never will. Either way, his armor tells a quieter story than his legend does. But if you think Radahn's gear has an identity crisis, wait until you see the armor worn by the soldiers who willingly followed Malenia into that Rot. Clean Rot set. If you're looking for the single best armor set in the game for resisting status effects, this is it. The full Clean Rot set carries roughly 150 immunity and 159 robustness, the highest combined total of those two resistances in the entire game. If you're heading anywhere near Scarlet Rot pools or frostbite enemies, this is the practical pick. Full stop. But here's the thing. The stats aren't even the most interesting part of this armor. Not even close. The Clean Rot Knights were Malenia's personal soldiers. They fought beside her, knowing exactly what would happen to them. The Scarlet Rot that consumed Malenia wasn't something they were immune to. There was no cure, no protection, no special enchantment keeping them safe. These knights watched their own flesh deteriorate in real time and kept swinging their swords anyway. They weren't enhanced super soldiers or blessed warriors. They were just completely devastatingly loyal, and the helmet tells that story better than anything else. It's a winged helm, and those wings aren't just decorative. They mark these knights as Malenia's own, an elite order that chose to identify themselves with their rotting commander even as the same curse ate them alive. Think about that for a second. They were rotting in service to this woman, and they chose to wear her symbol on their heads as a badge of honor. That's not military discipline. That's something closer to worship. Now, actually getting this set is its own form of devotion. You can farm it from Clean Rot Knight enemies in the Shaded Castle and the Halig Tree, but the drop rates are brutal. Players report needing 120 or more kills on average to complete a full set, and the drop rate inconsistency is real. You'll get 3 chest pieces before a single pair of greaves drops. It's the kind of grind that makes you question whether you're doing this for stats or for fashion, and honestly, the answer is probably both. You can alter the set to remove cloth elements from both the helm and chest piece, shaving off some weight at a minor defensive cost. Worth considering if you're tight on equip load. What makes this set genuinely special in the lore is the tension between decay and effectiveness. These knights were falling apart physically, and they never stopped being elite combatants. That contradiction is the entire point. Loyalty so absolute, it overrides self-preservation. No buffs, no divine protection, just commitment that borders on insanity. But if you think devotion to a cursed demigod is dark, wait until you see what the surgeons serving the Lord of Blood were willing to do. War Surgeon set. The White Mask is one of exactly 3 armor pieces in Elden Ring ring that directly increase your damage output. Put it on, proc blood loss on anything, and you get a flat 10% attack power buff for 20 seconds. Not a minor stat nudge. A genuine, timed damage window that turns bleed, builds from strong into absolutely disgusting. But getting it requires one of the most annoying acquisition methods in the game. You need to defeat 3 separate nameless white mask invaders who spawn in Mogwin Dynasty Mausoleum's Blood Lake. These aren't just standing around waiting for you. They invade at specific points across the lake, and you need to have either completed White Mask Varay's questline for the Pureblood Knight's medal, or reach the consecrated Snowfield Waygate to even access the area. It's a slog through one of the most hostile environments in the game, ankle deep in blood, fighting NPCs that hit like trucks. Here's where it gets worse. If you kill Mog, Lord of Blood, before defeating all 3 invaders, they stop spawning permanently. The set becomes completely unobtainable for that entire playthrough. No workaround, no merchant backup, nothing. Kill the boss too early, and you're locked out until New Game Plus. This is the kind of design choice that makes players furious, because there's zero in-game warning. You walk into Mog's Arena thinking you're progressing, and you've just erased an entire armor set from your inventory forever. The War Surgeon gown also drops in its altered form initially, meaning without the cloak attached. This trips up a lot of players who expect a full, unaltered set on pickup and assume they got a bugged drop. You didn't. That's just how it works. Now, the lore behind this set is genuinely tragic. White Mask Varay, the very first NPC you meet in the entire game, wears this armor. He was a war surgeon abducted by Mog against his will, but somewhere between the kidnapping and your arrival in the lands between, Varay became so thoroughly devoted to the Lord of Blood's vision that he now serves as Mog's chief evangelist. He's not a prisoner anymore. He's a true believer, and every time you put on the war surgeon set, you're wearing the uniform of a man who was brainwashed so completely, he forgot he was ever taken. The community has strong opinions about this one. The White Mask, paired with Rivers of Blood, became the poster child for tryhard PvP meta, and wearing it in invasions is basically a declaration of war. But veterans will tell you the combo is actually redundant. The 20-second buff window rarely aligns cleanly with Rivers of Blood's damage output timing, meaning you're proccing bleed, getting the buff, and then spending most of that window repositioning instead of attacking. It looks scary on paper. In practice, it's less optimal than people think. But if you think the War Surgeon set causes arguments, wait until you see the armor that became Elden Ring's unofficial mascot, Raging Wolf set. If there's one armor set that the Elden Ring community collectively decided belongs to the protagonist, it's this one. And the story behind how you actually get it is way darker than most people realize. The Raging Wolf set belongs to Vargram, one of the very first Tarnished to arrive at the Round Table Hold. Vargram wasn't just some random warrior. He aspired to attain the status of a wolf based on old legends, which gives the entire armor this romantic, almost mythic quality. He wanted to be something greater than what the lands between expected of him. But the game doesn't let you buy this armor from a merchant or find it in a chest. You have to kill Vargram yourself. Here's how it works. You join Volcano Manor, take assassination contracts from Tanith, and after completing the preliminary hits, Recusant Bernal gives you his own contract to eliminate Vargram and his companion, errant sorcerer Wilhelm, in a co-op invasion. You are literally sent to murder one of your own kind, a fellow Tarnished, someone who walked the same path you did. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Vargram and Wilhelm were friends, close allies, but according to the lore, external guidance drove them into conflict with each other, estranging them before you ever show up. The implication is that the Two Fingers, or some other unseen force, was actively engineering Tarnished on Tarnished violence. The game never fully explains why. It just lets that detail sit there, quietly horrifying, buried under all the action. Now let's talk stats, because this is where the fantasy crumbles. The full Raging Wolf set gives you 42 poise. That's decent, but nothing spectacular for a medium armor set. Elemental resistances are nothing to write home about either. This is not a competitive armor set. This is pure drip, fashion, and nothing else. But that's exactly why people love it. During the network test, this was the Bloody Wolf starter class armor. The earliest players who ever touched Elden Ring wore this set before the game even launched. That emotional attachment carried through to the full release, and never let go. Mix it with Rivers of Blood, and you've got the most iconic, most complained about silhouette in PvP history. One more thing worth knowing. This set is permanently missable. If you defeat Malekith in Crumbling Farum Azula, or kill Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, before completing Bernal's contracts, the entire questline locks out forever. 2 major story beats, and the wolf armor vanishes from your playthrough for good. But if you think fashion armor with 0 defensive value is frustrating, wait until you see the set that went completely the opposite direction. Bull Goat Set, 100 poise. That's the number. The highest poise value any armor set can give you in Elden Ring, tied only with the Verdigris set from the DLC. And the Bull Goat set has held that crown since launch. But here's the thing, this armor doesn't just protect you, it punishes you. Because the Bull Goat set is also the single heaviest armor in the entire game, and if you don't have the endurance to back it up, you're fat rolling through every fight like a boulder with a health bar. Getting it requires patches. Specifically, it requires not killing patches. If you cut him down in Murkwater Cave, which honestly feels like the right thing to do, this set is gone forever, locked out, no second chances. But if you let him live and follow his questline through Volcano Manor's assassination contracts, he'll eventually send you to kill Great Horned Tragoth at the ruin-strewn precipice overlook. Beat Tragoth, and the full Bull Goat set is yours. Now here's where it gets complicated. Tragoth is basically Elden Ring's version of Havel the Rock. Massive armor, legendary reputation, looks like he could bench press a cathedral. But unlike Havel, who attacks you on sight in Dark Souls, Tragoth is genuinely friendly. You can summon him as a cooperator against multiple bosses, he helps you, he fights alongside you, and then Patches tells you to murder him for a contract. And you do it, because that's what the questline demands. The strongest looking guy in the area was on your side, and you killed him for a set of armor and a pat on the back from a con artist. But let's talk about why players actually wear this thing. The Bull Goat's talisman increases poise by 33%, which means you can hit even higher poise numbers without wearing the full set. Swap out the heaviest pieces, mix in lighter alternatives, and you still reach massive breakpoints. This is the knowledge that separates players who understand poise from players who just stack weight and pray. Since patch 1.07, the community has been arguing about whether full Bull Goat poise is even worth the endurance investment compared to hitting 51 poise with medium armor. That debate has never been settled. It probably never will be. And then there's the meme. Smoking on that Bull Goat pack turned this armor into a cultural landmark. Wearing the full Bull Goat set in PvP is a statement whether you intend it to be or not. You're either a poise god who knows exactly what they're doing, or you're the punchline. There is no in between. But if you think the Bull Goat gets roasted, wait until you see the armor that gets compared to an onion, Lionel's set. There's something deeply funny about walking into a quiet church in Leyndell, seeing a dead man on a bed, and immediately stripping him of his armor. No boss fight, no questline, no dramatic cutscene. You just walk into the building near the lower capital Church Grace, find a corpse lying peacefully on a bed, and take everything he owned. That's it. That's the acquisition method. Welcome to Elden Ring. But here's where it gets dark. That corpse is Lionel the Lionhearted, and the community figured out very quickly what probably happened to him. See, Lionel declared himself a father figure to Fia after finding her displaced and vulnerable. He took her under his protection, swore to keep her safe. Noble stuff. Chivalrous stuff. And then he ended up dead on a bed. In the same game where Fia's entire mechanic involves hugging people and draining their vitality, the math writes itself. Now, the game never confirms this. It never says Fia killed Lionel with a hug, but the implication is sitting right there on that mattress, and the community has been running with it since launch. There's also a whole separate debate about whether Lionel's relationship with Fia was genuinely paternal or something more romantic. The item descriptions are deliberately ambiguous, and From Software clearly wanted players to draw their own conclusions. Nobody can agree, and honestly, that's probably the point. Here's the thing most players miss, though. This goofy-looking armor is genuinely excellent. The full set provides 79 poise, which puts it in direct competition with far heavier alternatives. For the endurance cost, you're getting poise numbers that have zero business being this accessible. Players overlook Lionel's set constantly because of how it looks, and that is entirely their loss. Speaking of how it looks, the Albinauric mask paired with Lionel's chest piece has become one of the most celebrated fashion combinations in the entire community. The bulbous silhouette draws immediate comparisons to Siegward the Onion Knight from Dark Souls 3. Whether that reads as charming or completely ridiculous depends entirely on who you ask. But either way, people remember it. One critical warning. This set is permanently missable. Once you progress the story far enough for Leyndell to become the Ashen capital, the building's interior changes completely and the armor vanishes forever. No second chances. If you want Lionel's gear, grab it before you burn anything down, but if you think finding armor on a dead man's bed is unsettling, wait until you see what the Crucible Knights had to go through to earn theirs. Crucible. Axe. Set. Most armor in Elden Ring belongs to the Golden Order. It was forged under the Erd Tree, blessed by its influence, and worn by soldiers who served Marika's vision. The Crucible Axe set is older than all of that. This armor predates the Golden Order, entirely. It comes from a time before the Erd Tree was worshipped, before Marika's religious and political structure existed, when the lands between was ruled by raw conquest and nothing else. The Crucible Knights served Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, back when he was still earning that title through blood and warfare. And the axe crest stamped across this armor isn't a generic military insignia. It's the personal mark of Ordovis, identifying these knights as direct servants of Godfrey himself, not foot soldiers in some general army, warriors who inherited his philosophy of combat, his approach to warfare as a concept. Here's the thing. Godfrey was known for overwhelming, earth-shattering physical power, pure brute force channeled through stomps and slams that could crack the ground itself. That's exactly what the Crucible represents, the primordial life energy that existed before the Erd Tree co-opted it. The Crucible Knights channel that same raw intensity, blending incantations with heavy melee combat in a way that mirrors their lord's fighting style. The armor isn't just cosmetically associated with Godfrey. It embodies his entire warrior doctrine, and the game makes you earn it. The set drops from defeating 2 Crucible Knights simultaneously in Oriza Hero's grave in the Altus Plateau. But before you even reach that arena, you have to survive one of the most punishing chariot trap gauntlets in the entire game. No shortcuts, no cheese routes, just you and a series of instant death chariots that will flatten you repeatedly until you memorize every timing window. Then you get rewarded with a 2-on-1 boss fight against enemies that individually give most players trouble. Worth noting, there's also a Crucible tree set tied to a different branch of this same ancient military tradition. That one is found in the deep-root depths, accessible through a coffin after defeating the valiant gargoyles in the Siofra Aqueduct. 2 paths to the same pre-Golden Order culture. The community has embraced both, but the axe set paired with the matching Crucible axe, spear, and shield creates one of the most thematically complete loadouts in the game. Every piece tells the same story. Every piece points back to a lands between that existed before everything the player spends 100 hours navigating was even built. That's what makes this armor quietly significant. You're not wearing a relic of the current power structure. You're wearing proof that something came before it. But if you think ancient armor carries heavy implications, wait until you see what the 3 fingers did to the knight who almost became Elden Lord. Fingerprint. Set. Vike wasn't some random tarnished. He was the tarnished, the one who got closer to the Elden Throne than anyone else in history. Not a side character, not a background figure, but the player's most direct predecessor. The guy who was doing exactly what you're doing, and he was doing it better than everyone. He was so close to becoming Elden Lord that his story essentially serves as a warning about what happens when you get that far and still fail. You get his armor by defeating Round Table Knight Vike at the Lord Contender's Evergale in the mountaintops of the Giants. It's a late-game Evergale fight that doesn't exactly advertise the weight of what you're picking up. You walk in, you fight a guy, you win, you leave with a set of blackened armor covered in strange burn marks. Simple enough. But the story behind those marks is one of the most tragic in the entire game. The fingerprint burns covering every piece of this set are a visual record of Vike's contact with the 3 fingers. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. The corruption is literally branded into the metal. Every swirl, every ridge, every pattern on this armor tells you exactly what happened to him. He touched something he shouldn't have, and it left permanent scars on everything he wore. But here's where it gets really interesting. To receive the Frenzied Flame as the player, you have to strip completely naked. You must remove all armor before making contact with the 3 fingers. Every single piece. That's a hard mechanical requirement. And Vike's failure to complete this transformation, his inability to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, may be directly tied to the fact that he never took off his armor. The set physically prevented his ascension. Think about that for a second. The armor he wore into battle, the gear that protected him through every fight on his journey to the throne, became the exact thing that stopped him from finishing. The barrier between Vike and godhood wasn't some cosmic force or a powerful enemy. It was his own equipment. That reframes how you think about armor in this world entirely. It's not just protection, it's identity. And sometimes identity is the thing that holds you back. Now, stat-wise, this set is deliberately frustrating. Poise sits around 41 to 43 for the full set, which sounds passable until you realize you're picking this up in the mountaintops of the Giants, where enemies hit like freight trains and that number barely keeps you standing. The lightning resistance is also notably poor, which creates an internal contradiction considering Vike's entire combat style revolves around lightning incantations and his signature spear. Players read this as either a straight-up oversight or a deliberate sign that Vike's corruption was never complete. The frenzied flame burned away his natural resistances, but never fully claimed him. He's stuck in between, too corrupted to be the Elden Lord, not corrupted enough to be the Lord of Chaos. The argument for pursuing this set is almost entirely aesthetic and narrative. You're not wearing it because it makes your build stronger. You're wearing it because Vike's story deserves to be carried forward. The Tarnished, who came the closest and lost everything because he couldn't let go of what he was wearing, but if Vike's tragedy hits hard, wait until you see the armor belonging to someone who lost even more on her path to power. Millennia's set. You beat the hardest boss in From Software history. You spent hours, maybe days, learning every single one of Millennia's attack patterns, dodging waterfowl dance, surviving the Goddess of Rot phase, and finally watching that health bar hit 0. Your reward? Armor that loses a stat comparison to the Godric soldiers wandering around Limgrave in the first hour of the game. Let me explain. Millennia's set costs 56,000 runes total from Enya at the Roundtable hold. 12,000 for the helm, 20,000 for the armor, 12,000 for the gauntlets, 12,000 for the greaves. And for that investment, you get nearly the lowest combined elemental resistances of any full armor set in the entire game. Physical defense? Mediocre. Poise? 37. That's it. Even if you slap on the Bullgoat Talisman, you're only hitting 49, which falls short of the 51 poise breakpoint that actually matters in PvE. You can't even tank a basic hit without staggering. But here's the thing. The stats aren't a mistake. They're lore accurate. The entire set is made of unalloyed gold, the specific material Miquella personally engineered to ward off outer god interference. This wasn't combat armor. It was never designed to stop a sword or absorb a fireball. It was a medical intervention. Miquella built this to protect his twin sister from the scarlet rot that was consuming her body from the inside out. Every piece of this armor exists because a brother was trying to save his dying sister, not because a general was preparing for war. That context completely reframes the terrible defensive stats. They make perfect sense when you understand the armor was functioning as a spiritual barrier, not a physical one. And then there's the gauntlet problem. Players noticed almost immediately after launch that the left gauntlet Millennia wears during her boss fight features distinct golden rings, but the version you actually equip shows a plain brown glove. It's a small cosmetic discrepancy. The community has not stopped talking about it since release. It's the kind of detail that proves just how closely people scrutinize every single pixel of this set, because Millennia means that much to the player base. The real debate around this armor has never been resolved, and honestly, probably never will be. One side of the community wears the full set purely as a trophy. You killed Millennia. You earned the right to look like her. Stats are irrelevant when you're wearing proof that you conquered the hardest fight in the game. The other side calls it a stat trap that From Software should have patched, arguing that endgame boss armor should at least compete with mid-game alternatives. Neither side is wrong. The trophy players understand something about identity that the optimization players don't, and the optimization players understand something about game design that the trophy players ignore. Both positions are completely legitimate, and the tension between them says more about how players relate to gear than any stat sheet ever could. But if Millennia's armor disappoints in raw numbers, wait until you see what happens when you wear the armor of the literal first Elden Lord. Elden Lord set. Let's be honest right away. The Elden Lord set is disappointing. Even with the full set equipped, the defensive values are objectively worse than Godric soldier armor you can pick up within 2 hours of starting the game. This is the armor of the first and greatest Elden Lord, and it gets outperformed by gear worn by the guys who guard a castle gate. That's the reality, and every player who has ever bought this set from Enya knows it. You earn it by defeating Godfrey in one of the most demanding two-phase fights in the entire game. First as Godfrey, first Elden Lord, a composed warrior wielding his golden axe with terrifying precision. Then as Huara Lu, warrior, where he rips Sirach off his own back and becomes a bare-knuckle brawler who grabs you off the ground and slams you into the earth like you owe him money. You survive all of that, and your reward is an armor set that loses to starter gear on a spreadsheet. But here's the thing. Read the item description. It ties the set to the moment Godfrey's eyes lost their golden hue. That's not a poetic flourish. That's the exact moment in the lore when he had defeated every worthy enemy in the lands between. Every last one. There was nothing left to conquer, so Grace abandoned him, and Marika exiled him. The armor you're wearing isn't the armor of a king at his peak. It's the clothing of a man who had nothing left to fight for. A warrior stripped of purpose. And that reframes everything. The community has been vocal about one genuine missed opportunity. There's zero zero Sirach iconography anywhere on the set. No lion motifs, no beast imagery, nothing referencing the loyal companion Godfrey suppressed on his back for centuries to contain his bloodlust. Players have pointed this out since launch, and honestly, they're right. A Sirach reference on the cloak, or pauldrons, would have elevated the entire set from forgettable to iconic. What does work is the Elden Lord crown. It pairs surprisingly well with completely unrelated armor sets, making it a staple for mixed fashion builds. But the full set together, almost never the optimal choice. Not for defense, not for poise, not for any measurable stat. Wearing it is a pure declaration of intent, and maybe that's exactly the point. In a game where every piece of gear carries a story, the Elden Lord set asks you a question that no stat screen can answer. Are you wearing armor to survive, or are you wearing it to mean something? Godfrey chose duty over power. He served the Golden Order until it had no use for him, then walked away with nothing but the clothes on his back. Choosing to wear his armor, despite its weakness, might be the most in-character decision you can make as a tarnished walking toward that same throne. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can wear is the thing that doesn't help you at all. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the best quests in Skyrim explained, click the video on the screen now.